It's exciting, you guys. We never had this many people. Huh? They went to Diminishable. I mean, driving range.
All right, we should be live on everything now.
All right, super. Max is here. All right. All right, so I'm ready to call the meeting, the regular school committee 2nd, 2020, to order at 7:00 p.m. I don't have a gavel. All those who can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, I don't have a flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Like the round robin. Okay, this is exciting. We have a lot of guests, attending tonight because we have this enormously stressful period in our lives. And people hopefully are watching this on Facebook and YouTube as well. So we're going to have some public comment tonight. Before I start it and give you some rules, Pam, you want to say a few things?
I do. We had a couple of emails come into my office that I think there was a little bit of confusion. I just want to clarify. This was not a last minute scheduled special meeting for some kind of public hearing, which a couple of emails came in my office and assumed. This was a regularly scheduled school committee meeting because this school committee anticipated it was going to be a challenging summer. And though we don't normally meet in July, they scheduled a meeting in July. So this was a regularly scheduled meeting. And the reason I sent out a video was just to bring your attention to what would be talked about tonight and give people the opportunity to speak at public comment. I don't want it to be misinterpreted as a public hearing that people found out about last minute. Our school committee schedule is posted. And as I said, this was a regularly scheduled meeting. Suzanne and I just felt it was important to get the word out there that this would be the topic tonight and that invite people to come who wanted to be heard. In addition, I'll be talking a little bit later. We did send out a survey on July 2nd that closed on July 8th. We had 889 families respond, and there'll be another survey going out very soon. But I just wanted to clarify that this is just a normal school committee meeting, but unless we brought to your attention what would be talked about tonight, I didn't want people to think that we weren't letting you know what the topic would be.
Yeah,
If I could add to that too, I would just encourage people to know that there is always public comment at the beginning of our meetings. And so, but because we know how much people want to share with us, that, you know, that's why you made a special announcement about this. But yes, to your point, Pam, this is what we always do.
Yeah, the only difference tonight with public comment is we're going to let it go longer than we usually do because, I mean, we're psyched to have so many people, but this is a really important topic. So with that, I just want to say this is a virtual meeting. It's being recorded. So your comments will all be recorded. And we're running the virtual meeting in accordance with the executive order issued by Governor Baker on March 12, 2020, which the order was suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 304, section 20. So this is how we're going to do it. If you are not watching it on Zoom, you can text questions to this phone number, 617-233-2959. We'll put it up on the screen in just a second. And if you are on Zoom and you want to ask a question, if you raise your hand, I'll be able to see like your hand. You'll go to the top of my queue, and I'll just start unmuting you to ask your question. And we're going to see how that goes. If you don't feel like talking out loud, you can use the Q&A feature on Zoom and just write your question or your comment down. And that way we can do it. We can have two modalities going. If you want to say something that someone already said, you're welcome to just say, I heard what, Amy said. I just want to ditto that, and we can record that on your comment as like a, emphasize that comment with additional people agreeing. So right now I just see one attendee with his hand up, so we're gonna try to get started, and it's.
Then can I ask one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are we taking comments or are we taking questions and responding to them?
Oh, so thank you, Karen. We're gonna take comments. I mean, you can certainly ask questions, and depending on what they are. I mean, if there's anything we need to deliberate as a committee, we can't respond to them tonight. But if there's something simple that we can say yes or no to, we'll try to do the best we can. But in the interest of time and not getting into discussions that we're not prepared for yet, we're just gonna really take the comments. So hopefully that's satisfying. So anyway, the first person here is, I just lost your name, Henry Scott, maybe?
Yes, it is. I was just checking in to see if if this is functioning properly. Can you see me, or is it you're just hearing me?
So we won't be able to see you. We'll just be able to hear you, which is fine. So what you should do is, Mr. Scott, just say your name and sort of say maybe just what school your kids go to or what ages, just so we can kind of keep track of who's in which building.
Yeah,
and then let her rip.
I'm Henry Scott. My daughter's going into the 7th grade at the middle school.
Oh, Karen, you want to share your screen and start writing?
I will, yes.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Scott, go ahead.
I said I'm Henry Scott, and my daughter's going into the 7th grade at the middle school.
Okay. Let us know what you're thinking.
Well, all I wanted to do was make sure that this was set up. I'm waiting for you to start, and I'll add things as we go along. I just wanted to make sure it was functioning properly. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Okay, so if anyone else wants to talk, raise your hand. Amy, if you have people on the text, you can raise your hand and just tell me what you're hearing. And I'm going to unmute Cecilia right now. Go ahead.
Before we go into public comment, I just want to note that I am unable to add into the Padlet, so I will just I will let you know as I get texts, but I cannot type.
And
I'll type them if I can. Yeah.
Suzanne, can you do one raised hand, one Q&A, because there are some questions.
Yep, I'm gonna. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So go ahead, Cecilia. Can you talk?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Hi. My name's Tasia. I have 2 daughters at Stanley School going into 2nd and 4th grade. So I just want to thank you for taking my comment. I know this has been a very challenging time for everyone, and I want to acknowledge that I believe you guys have been getting a lot of mixed direction from the state, which has made it exceptionally hard for everybody. So with that said, I just want to say, I just have a few questions or ideas that I wanted to share. Maybe they're things you've already considered. I wanted to ask and share with you that I think outdoor learning is maybe a very good idea. Just because I'm concerned that once we get back into the buildings, now that it's summer, our numbers are very low for the COVID. And I'm concerned that once everybody starts going indoors again, that the virus will spread. And so being outdoors seems to be a much safer place. Another thought I had was, everyone's talking about getting another wave of this virus in the fall. And that would leave if we had to go to remote learning in the fall, that would leave a very short time for parents for students to get to know their teachers and teachers to get to know their students. So looping teachers may be something to consider there. That way teachers could just pick up knowing exactly where their students are. You all know how I feel about hand washing facilities. Hold on. I'd rather see more hand washing and less hand sanitizer. And a very thorough entrance screening process. I know some schools are planning to take temperatures, and they have plans in place for what will happen if there is a student with any sort of sickness or symptoms. And with that, I would like to see a great deal of communication to families and parents. If there is a student that's sent home with any symptoms, just to let us know so we know what to look for. I asked my daughters what they would like to see. And one of them said she'd love to see everybody be given rubber gloves for recess so that they don't spread germs on the playground equipment. And another thought was just having disposable fresh face masks available to students every day, because you just don't know how often they're getting washed at home. And if they're, kids are always touching their faces. So those were just some ideas that I had. Interested to hear what everyone else has to say. I would like to see better hand washing facilities within the building. I know your budget was cut this year, but town meeting, that was very disappointing. I would like to see, if there is a special town meeting, that we request money so that the schools can be updated to have better facilities.
All right, great, thank you. I'm sure tons of people are going to echo your same comments. I'm just going to look at the Q&A right now, and I see that there's 3 questions, Pam, about kindergarten parents and not being included in the first round of survey, and maybe that's something we can do in this next round of surveys.
Can I speak to that, please?
Yeah.
They absolutely were not included in the first survey. Our district actually went out with the initial survey much sooner than most districts. The downside to that was that our kindergarten registrations were not entered into the Aspen system. They have all been entered in. We knew that at the time, and what we were trying to do is get a pulse on the current students and get a pulse on the community with that initial survey. I've received emails, and I've mentioned to the teachers that people have personally written to me and said that their opinions and answers to that survey would have changed given recent events that have come out in the news and things like that. So it was a deliberate survey that went out without the incoming kindergartners, knowing that we would have more surveys to follow. And now those kindergarten families are registered in our system, and they are included on everything that goes out from this point forward. So Dr. Bacon and I were talking this morning about the next level of survey that will be going out, and they will be included.
Super, thanks. We have the next person who'd like to speak, Ms. Zoll. I'm gonna unmute you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Can folks hear me?
Yep.
Fab. Thank you. This is Keiko Zoll. I'm a Nason Road resident, and I'm the parent of a rising second grader at Stanley School. I echo many of Tasia's comments, and I think I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who is still working full-time from home, and the entire process of trying to homeschool while doing that was a special challenge. I think one of the things I've seen, and I think that everybody here can agree, is that our youngest children need the most instructional support. And that unfortunately, we as a community are not prepared to provide families with the support or resources that they need to offer that kind of learning support at home. And, as Tasia mentioned, like, I knew this when town meeting voted on the budget that cut $381,000 from our schools. As a town meeting member, I voted against that budget because I know the last thing that our schools needed right now in the run up to reopening was fewer fiscal resources. I think it's also fair to say that we know remote learning experience does not provide the same level of engagement and learning retention as in-person instruction, especially at the pre-K and elementary levels. I apologize if you hear my dog whining in the background. There was a study that just came out of South Korea that shows COVID transmission rates among children ages 0 to 9 is significantly lower than children ages 10 to 19. The way the survey was, or the way the study was designed, they only broke it into those 2 brackets. And so I think knowing that, I feel that our district cannot have a one size fits all model across all 5 schools. And I think with as much as we can, we need to prepare families now for the possibility of staggered start dates based on their child's grade and school building. And I think there should be a priority placed at the elementary level because they have the highest learning needs. So I would just urge the school committee and district leadership to consider the strategy for pandemic resilient teaching and learning as outlined in the Harvard Global Health Institute report that was released Monday. It puts a first priority for reopening on grades pre-K through 5 and in-person special education services at grade levels pre-K to 8. The next priority for reopening would then be grades 6 to 8 and in-person special education services at grade levels 9 to 10. And then the third priority for reopening would be if sufficient pandemic resilient learning space is available after allocation to grades K to 8, grades 9 to 10 open at a hybrid schedule with only a subset of students on campus at any particular point of time to facilitate de-densification. I believe that our schools need to be safe places, not only for our students to learn, but they also have to be safe places of employment for their employees. And I think that if our district can draw from the recommendations in this Harvard report, which I'm happy to email to the committee, our schools can achieve both. And finally, the last thing I just want to say is that family engagement is critical in this process. I'm encouraged to hear that there's another survey coming out, but I hope that there will be other avenues for direct parent and family engagement beyond just surveys. So yeah, that's my piece. Thanks all.
Thank you. The next person is Alice Stein. Oh, Alice Stein, for some reason, it's not letting you talk because you have an older version. Hold on, I'm gonna promote you to second. Can you talk now? Alice? Hello?
It's showing that she has no microphone.
And I just promoted her to, all right, I'm gonna work on her. In the meantime, the next person is someone who's written as parent. If your panelist name is parent, go ahead and unmute yourself. Hello. All right, let's try Joanna.
If you want to remind people that they can call or text me at 617-233-2959, and I'm happy to read what they write as well.
All right, Joanna Marino, can you hear us? Can you talk?
Yeah. Right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Joanna Marino. I have two sons who will be entering the school system next year. One son will be entering kindergarten, and my younger son will be going into the preschool for his first year of preschool. I would just like to, I guess, echo what Tasia and Kiko had mentioned earlier. I think that they're, given the different levels of the students, I think it was, at least in our experience, it was really challenging to remote home. My son who's going into kindergarten was actually part of the preschool last year. And so we had an experience, and it's certainly no reflection on the teachers or the staff that we interacted with. I think all things considered, everyone did an amazing job. If anything, it underscored what a poor substitute for a teacher or a therapist I am when it comes to my son, because I think that it was a real challenge for our family. I'm a full-time working parent also, and our offices have been closed since March 17th. And so we'll remain closed through Labor Day, at least, although I've been hearing some rumors that we'll be working from home for the rest of the calendar year. And so working from home and having the kids around has been very challenging. But in terms of trying to help my son, finish preschool, it was a real tough thing for our family. And I think having them back in schools, if they can do that safely, I liked many of the suggestions that Tasia had mentioned. I'd like to say that I think little kids get a bad rap when it comes to the masks, because, it's anecdotally, of course, But our sons are actually very good at wearing their masks. We bought fun ones, and they have a couple of different ones, and they get to pick it out. And, our son has had them, in stores and on the playgrounds, and has actually been very good about wearing them when asked. And so I think that was sort of written off a lot, is that, the younger kids won't be able to wear masks or socially distance. But we've been very transparent with the kids about, what's going to keep them safe. And so I think that there's not as much credit given to them that there could otherwise be. So I think I would just like to say that, we did respond to the survey, even though my son's entering kindergarten. I think we received it because we have been part of the school system before as preschool parents. And, I hope that there's a way that we can get the kids back in the classroom. I think my son's mental health definitely was impacted as a result of not seeing his teachers and his friends every day. He's very routine oriented, and this definitely impacted his routine. I think I would be in favor of, as somebody else mentioned, not a one size fits all. So I think there could be potentially answers that are different for the lower levels as opposed to, the upper grades. I think that either way, it'd be great if we as parents could have choices. I'm from Ohio originally, and I've been tracking a lot of what the school systems are doing there. And the parents are given the choice of online remote access or live in the classroom access. Once they choose, they're kind of stuck with that choice. They can't go back and forth, but they are, and other school districts are giving a hybrid. So I think it's great that we are coming up with a plan for all three of those. But I think whatever we end up ultimately, great if perhaps the parents would be able to weigh in to talk about sort of what works best for their family. I guess my one final comment is, I think Superintendent Angelakis had mentioned in her video earlier this week that, we may not know until closer to, the middle of August. And while I appreciate that this is a really tough decision and not one that I would certainly want to be making, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into it, I'm hopeful that maybe we can get some better guidance sooner than that, because, that's essentially 3 weeks before school starts, and it's not a lot of time to plan. And so I'm hopeful that, maybe we can hear some more definitive guidance on what a plan would be before then. So, but in any event, thank you so much for all of your hard work. We really do appreciate it. I know it's a impossible situation. So thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Let's try the person who's labeled parent again. I've unmuted you. Can you talk? I'm not sure. All right, let's try to go to Miss Oxton. Allison.
Hi, my name is Allison Oxton. I have a son going into the first grade at Clark School. I was also previously the Hadley school nurse and a member of the Board of Health. And Superintendent Angelakis knows that I had concerns with the air quality in specifically Hadley School, Clark School, and the middle school. I was concerned with the level of carbon dioxide that had been noted. And there's a lack of research about exposure to high levels of carbon dioxide in children, but in adults, high exposure over a week's period can tend to create symptoms of high carbon dioxide. So my concern is that kids going to school and teachers wearing masks, plus the poor air quality, might lead to a quicker spread of any kind of germs, viruses. And I'd like to know if there has been any attention given to the ventilation systems in these schools as part of the safe reopening of schools eventually. So I just wanted to voice my concern and see if there was any of the budget I think you are allotted $500,000 for something on the town warrant. I can't remember exactly, but if anyone is paying any attention to the ventilation where the exhaust system had failed in the past, and that's all.
Thank you, Ally. Next, we
Can
have,
I just chime in here?
yeah.
I do want families to know that they may not have looked to the rest of the agenda. There is a presentation on where we're at with the reopening. In addition to some of the, and I will be actually, some of the answers to your questions are within that presentation. And so rather than come to public comment and everyone ditches us when we're live, I would hope that this group of people and attendees would stay through the meeting so you can not feel ignored with the questions and concerns you're bringing up, but so that you can see where we're at in our planning and what I'm asking of school committee tonight. So I would just encourage, I mean, we're at 208 attendees. I don't think in my entire lifetime we've ever had that many attendees at school committee. And I would just encourage you to stay around as I get through my superintendent's report so that you can see where we're at and what the direction is and be up to date with what the commissioner is sharing with us.
Thanks. How about Marissa Fava?
Hi, thanks for the opportunity just to share my public comment here. I just wanted to echo what Joanna mentioned about mask wearing. I have 2 students at Hadley, a rising first grader and a rising 4th grader, as well as a 3-year-old. And they've adapted well to good mask wearing, understand the importance of it, and really just see it as normal as the requirement to wear shirt and pants when you go out in public. They just put on their mask and they remind us to bring them too. So I was glad Joanna mentioned that. But specifically, I did want to encourage, the creativity of potentially pushing off the start date of school, whether it is in person or virtually. There's a lot that should be done, but also can be done to our schools to make them safe to be in person. I work in corporate office space, so read everything about those kinds of spaces and return to work, and know that the nature of schools is traditionally older facilities, but the same could possibly be said for hospitals too. And I think I posted it to one of the local town pages, but there's a expert in air quality speaking about opening up schools that's going to be hosted next week. He's from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, and is speaking to making schools safe in regards to air quality. But I think that if we push off the start of school and we give ourselves time to prepare the building, but also for the potential of remote learning, because with a potential second wave, teachers need time to practice and, convert their skills that they're so good at and doing in person and convert them to the remote learning. So whether it's getting used to technology or taking their lesson plans or figuring out how to, use breakout rooms, just more time is needed to get to that start date. And I think it can be applied to both the in-person facility as well as to any distance learning. Part of that too, though, I just really want to praise the school district for committing to the Chromebooks and having that be a technology tool that will help provide equity, or one component of equity in terms of the remote learning, but also safety and bringing those tools back and forth. I was really pleased to see that. And I think we could just take it one step further and, let everyone kind of rise to the challenge and make the building safe, make the, content really great and keep teaching our kids. That's what I felt was missing when we were all caught off guard with this, quarantine and staying at home and closing up the schools. But I think at this point we have time to and can give ourselves time to make everything better and, work with what we have. So that was my comment on that.
Thank you. Amy, do you have any text that you want to read?
I do. I have one. Actually, the first one, I'm going to jump in line. I have a parent who is on Facebook who would like quick access via Zoom, and I can't quickly call up the link. is there anybody on this panel who could provide that quickly, or is it on the, is there like a website where there's a link? I believe that it's.
The school committee agenda on the.
No. Sorry, not the school committee agenda, but the Zoom link.
Yeah, the Zoom link is on the school committee agenda.
Okay, and that can be found on the school
district website, yeah.
Okay, so if you go to the district website, I think it's under About Us, there is a school committee page. And then the links to the agendas, and it should be in there. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm hearing that they can't see it, so I will try to find that. But in the meantime, I do have a text from a parent named Vanessa Cavallo, who says, I've decided not to send my child to school this year. She's supposed to start kindergarten. Will we have the option to sign up for kindergarten the year after? She just turned 5 in June, so she's on the younger side. Thank you. So I know that's pretty specific. Superintendent, do you want to take that?
I muted myself as I was sneezing or choking or whatever. Yes, the answer is yes. Suzanne, if you scroll through the Q&As, there are some comments that are really good, and I don't know how the rest of the audience feels, but there was a comment in the Q&A about perhaps getting through the meeting and then moving public comment to the end, because some of the questions and concerns and comments people are making, I don't want to cut this public comment short. This is your meeting, obviously the school committee, but it is a thought. For example, there's a comment in here about Henry Scott says, I absolutely agree with the outdoor classes as long as the weather permits. What I would be sharing with you is that we are looking into purchasing event tents for each of the schools with sides that come down so that in inclement weather, the children would be getting out there. But again, this is the school committee meeting. I don't want to derail your public comment, but there are a lot of things that are coming up here that could potentially be answered in my superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'm for that, because I agree with you. Like the comments I'm reading, they're asking things that are, you know, like what are the kids riding the bus and what's going to happen with the IEPs and some things that I know you are addressing. You want to just like, is there a way to take your superintendent's report like this? I mean, we
yes,
have so much to talk about.
I can take it out of order.
Okay, but like not everything.
Well, it's a presentation that speaks to the 3 plans and what is going on in our heads right now.
But we're not going to do the business administration.
No, let me go straight to the presentation. I'll take
I agree
with your permission, I'll take it out of order. The only thing I would like to do prior to that, because poor Max Casper has very long days, I would like to introduce him and just have him say hello to all of you. And then go straight into my presentation and then follow it up with more public comment if people want. But whatever's not in that presentation, I'll explain why I'm not able to answer that at this time, if that's okay. And then we can go back and I would do the other items on my superintendent's report.
Okay. So Suzanne, just as a point of order, so just let's make sure that we take a vote to change the format of this.
Could someone make a motion to take the superintendent's report out of order right now?
I will make the motion to move the portion of the superintendent's report.
And can I okay, thank you, Ted. It's a roll call vote. So Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Suzanne? Yes. Okay. All right, Pam.
So I only see a part of my gallery. I don't see us all. Max, I see you now. Welcome. So it is my pleasure. I mentioned this a few weeks ago to introduce Max Casper, who is not new to our town or our community, but is in the new role of combined director of facilities for both general government and the school department. We had this role a couple of years ago. It was filled by Mike Scola. It had been left empty and until Max stepped up along with Tom Prentice and they were sharing the role. And it is official that we welcome Max Casper as the joint director of facilities. And I wanted him to have the opportunity to meet all of you. What I will say is that Garrett Baker, Max, Martha Seibert, and myself are meeting bi-weekly. We have a meeting tomorrow morning so that we're on top of projects. We know where projects stand. We are extending our reach in terms of what reopening of school might look like. We have an agenda. So Max, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you want to talk a little bit about where you've been, what you've done for this community, and how you landed in this role.
Thank you, Pam. I really appreciate that, and appreciate you giving me a little slice of the time tonight. I know it's a lot going on in this meeting and in the schools in general. So I just really appreciate the opportunity. I just really wanted to introduce myself to the board. I do know a lot of the board members already. We've had some interactions, and but I really look forward to working with them all more and working with Pam more. As Pam referenced, I have been with the town for a while now, actually coming on finishing up my 6th year. My previous role with the town was as the building commissioner, building inspector, and I have had a facilities role in the town side, non-school buildings, for the last couple of years as well, in addition to the building commissioner role. But it's a really exciting opportunity for myself and for the town, and at a very interesting time, no doubt. And there's tremendous challenges with facilities without COVID, and as we can all see by what we're talking about tonight, tremendous challenges now that are new to all of us. But I'm really looking forward to continuing to dive into it, and I will be heavily involved with a lot of these items that are coming up tonight. And you know, my initial answer to most of it is we're going to be working through it and working together and trying to do the best we can to work at this really challenging time. But we're going to do our best, and I just wanted to introduce myself to the board, say hello, and thank you for your time.
Hey, Max, also, don't forget you're an integral part of the school building committee and our sustainability part of the project. So thank you for that too.
Absolutely, yes. And thanks for bringing that up, Suzanne. I've actually been on the school building committee for a while now. I was on the committee in my former capacity as building commissioner. So that's definitely going to continue. We had a really productive sustainability subcommittee meeting yesterday, and that project is really moving along great. So thank you, Suzanne.
Amy?
I just want to say, Max, that I could not be happier that you are on board with us. This was a major hole in our district, and we are so beyond thrilled. I think especially now more than ever to have our superintendent not have to attempt to play the role that you have taken on. So thank you so much.
Yes, welcome.
There was an immediate sense of relief when Max was appointed. There is somebody who has much more knowledge in this area than I do, somebody to lead and not just ask questions to or of. So I'm thrilled. And Max and I have worked together in varying capacities over the years, but I couldn't be happier as well. So welcome aboard.
Super. Pam, you want to share your screen and do your presentation?
I am not a co-host, so can you go to the agenda?
Oh, you should be able to as a panelist.
Let me see if I can. I
Okay.
will try. I wasn't prepared to do that because I thought.
Okay, I can do it.
Okay, if you go to the agenda, the superintendent's report is linked. And then if I go to the link within my superintendent's report, there is a fall reopening slide.
Yeah.
At the very bottom.
Oh, of course, I have no access to that, but that's okay. Here. Wait, not that one. Hold on.
Not that one.
This one.
This is the one. Yep. Can you go to, it would be better if I were controlling it, but I'll just do what they do and say next slide. So if you could
Okay, fine.
Start at the beginning, please. Okay, next slide. I could have given this little bit of introduction on the introductory slide, but what I want the community to understand is that every district is in the same position, and I'm sure you do understand that. We have had, and I've continued to tell you that we've had almost weekly calls with the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley. Our last call was as late as this morning at 11:30. We have about an hour-long call. He has an agenda and a slide deck, and then we get to ask questions. I was attending the Superintendent's Executive Institute Conference last week. It's typically in person. It was a virtual conference. But it was 2.5 days. What was most important is that it's an opportunity for me to get together with colleagues in person. And there were 8 North Shore superintendents together, and we were all struggling with the same decisions, the same quandaries. And one of the things that the North Shore Superintendents Roundtable has been talking a lot about, there were 25 of us on a call yesterday, is it would be nice if we could do some kind of unified approach to this. But my message to that and my message to my colleagues was it's very difficult to do a unified approach when our facilities are in different states. Some facilities are new, some facilities are old. If you have an older facility, that means your classroom sizes, square footage is less than it would be in a newer building. It's not a snow day call is what I said to them. A snow day call, you all want to go down together. Nobody wants to not be on the call. This is much more critical. And for those of you that aren't aware, when this all started, probably in June, the commissioner shared with us that there was going to be a directive and a prescriptive and a mandate that all school districts would be doing the same thing in a return to school in the fall. And he said that 85 to 95% of us would have to follow that mandate with very few deviations. Over the last 4 to 6 weeks, that has changed dramatically. It has become more local decisions with the school committee making the ultimate decisions. So I would say in the last 4 weeks, the push has really been to get students back to school in person. You don't have to preach that to me. In my district strategy, since I've been in this role, our number one priority has been the social emotional well-being of our students. We've created the Swift and Harbor programs at both the middle school and at the high school. So when we think about the social emotional needs of our kids, that's not lost on myself or my team. That continues to be the number one priority for us. But there are also some realities that we have to face. So DESE and the governor and the state are looking to get us back to in person, and the initial push was all in person with using the health and safety requirements, and then the reopening plans. Obviously, we're going to address the 3 learning models by July 31st. We need to submit preliminary plans to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on what model we're leaning towards, what the rationale is for our thinking. And so we are working on that as a team. In addition to that, we're still awaiting DESE guidance. For example, I might say it later in my presentation, but I'll say it now. My notes from today are that transportation guidance and facility safety guidance is supposed to come out today. What typically happens is we get those emails between 8:30 and 10:30 at night. So we could be receiving that email while I'm on the school committee at the school committee meeting. What we said was coming out definitely, well, he said was coming out definitely tomorrow night, is the school calendar. And I'll explain a little bit more about that tomorrow, later in the slideshow. Where am I? Next slide. So the goal for the fall is a safe return of as many students as possible to in-person school setting to maximize learning and to maximize the needs of our kids, meaning their social emotional well-being. Next slide. Getting students and the educators back to school in person, but safely, relies on a combination of strategies, including key health and safety measures. And this was a slide actually from the commissioner's slide deck that talked about the research that he looked at. You know, the primary route of transmission for COVID-19 is respiratory, so masks and face coverings protect against the COVID-19 infection, physical distancing. Several weeks ago, the commissioner and DESE came out with a guidance under this second bullet where a minimal physical distance of 3 feet is appropriate as informed by evidence when combined with the other measures outlined in the list of safety requirements. Hand washing and hand sanitizing. As was said in the public comment, hand washing with soap and water is really the best option, and staying home when sick. Students and educators should stay home if they're not feeling well, if they're not sure what's wrong. I find this one slightly amusing in that I would like to think people were doing that all along, even with the typical flu, but it was not always the case. Next slide. So the review of the medical literature that the commissioner shared, and as was also spoken about at public comment, was about the transmission of the virus. And we were in full-blown discussion since Monday about the report that came out on Saturday from South Korea that Keiko referred to, in terms of the students 10 through 19 being able to transmit it. That was information that came out after this slide was created. So it was new information, it was changing information, but we do know from the commissioner's medical teams that are advising him that schools don't appear to have played a major role. There's this new consideration, we have to consider that our students ages 10 through 19 could very well possibly transmit it. So that is something new information that came out since this presentation was created. Next slide. So what we've been tasked to do is to come out with 3 possibilities for reopening. The first is all in person with new safety requirements. The second is the hybrid model, in person, a combination of in-person, remote. And the final is all remote learning. But this also states, and it's very accurate, that parents have the right to choose, no matter what model is recommended by the district. Parents have the right to choose if they want to keep their students home and continue with remote learning. And when this second survey comes out in the very near future, it will be asking you, what would your preference be? And it is your right, if your circumstances and your family circumstances allow, to continue with remote learning, and it is the district's obligation to provide such learning for your kids. Next slide. So what are the next steps? And these are already taking place. There's the Return to School District Task Force at a high level. There's a reopening working group that has been meeting for several weeks. And then there will be school-based COVID teams. So what do those teams look like? Next slide. The Return to School District Task Force is already made up of between 20 and 25 members. I think we were at 23, except that we need 1 or 2 school committee members tonight to decide who would join this team at some point in this meeting. It is made up of myself, the town administrator, central office leaders, 1 or 2 school committee members, the Board of Health and the nurse leader, the facilities director, our transportation and food services director, teachers and staff, parents, and the school resource officer. If we needed to add additional members to inform policy and communication, we would do so. And the focus of this group is just what's been talked about tonight at public comment once again. It is policy. What are the policies that may need to be changed by school committee during these unusual times? And then communication to families, communication to the broader community. That is the focus of this larger task force. Next slide. The Reopening District Working Group has merged with our Phase 4 curriculum group that has been meeting with Dr. Bacon. This will be led by Dr. Bacon, though I will be attending this meeting, this committee meeting as well. And this is made up of all of the school district administrators, the building administrators, teachers and school staff, parents, students where appropriate, community members, and members of that first task force. Again, there may be additional members to inform planning and development on this. What this group is doing is looking at all perspectives on hybrid learning, remote learning, combination of those, in-person learning. What are our schedules going to look like for our high school students, for our middle school students, for our elementary students? So they're really in the meat of the work, and their focus is the planning and development. Next slide. And the final groups that will be meeting are going to be school-based reopening teams. The total will be approximately 40 or 50 members, because I expect that each committee will be made up of 8 to 10 per school. And their focus is going to be, once the plan is selected, on the planning and the implementation of whatever plan and whatever model we're going with. So it will be led by the principal, the school nurse will be there, the custodial staff, teachers and other school staff. It's important to us at this level that we have either the school psychologist or the guidance counselor on there so that we don't forget the mental health piece. Parents, students, again, as appropriate, maybe at the high school level, and additional members to inform planning and implementation. If you are a parent and you are interested in being part of this, I would encourage you to reach out to your building principals. There's going to be a lot more volunteers, is my sense, than they could probably take. And if you're a school council member, as a parent, it might serve you well to volunteer for this position and be involved. But again, so there's 3 tiers of task force. There's the district, there's the working group, and then there are school-based teams. But the school-based teams have not yet met because they'll be meeting to plan and implement whatever plan is selected and move forward by the school committee. Next slide. So what are we waiting for in terms of additional guidance? We have a feasibility study that should be checked off. The fall reopening checklist we're still waiting for. The process for handling a COVID-19 positive case in the school committee. I do have a document to reference for all of you. We're waiting on remote learning resources. What the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is looking into is a unified learning management program that could be used across multiple districts or across the whole Commonwealth, if so choose. Facilities and operations guidance, as I mentioned, that's supposed to be coming out today/tonight, along with the transportation guidance, guidance for special education programs and supports. I saw a question in the Q&A that asked about would there be reduced IEP services? That is not our anticipation. Our anticipation is that services and students in substantially separate programs would be coming in all of the time and be serviced all of the time. I do not anticipate reduced services for students on IEPs. We're waiting on additional guidance on athletics. If any of you heard that the reopening task force for athletics, the MIAA, recently came out with a decision that preseason practice wouldn't even begin until September 14th, which is where I think some of the comments about delaying or phasing in the reopening of schools would occur. And then there's some key policy decisions. There was a policy earlier we were talking about at a meeting I had today, and it was a perfect example of where the school committee may have to adjust our policies in order to move forward in these uncertain times. Next slide, please. So, the first model, Model 1, all in-person learning. There are so many considerations that the school committee needs to make, that our task force and working groups are going to make. One of the first things is our facilities. The age of our facilities, our classroom size, the temperature within our classrooms. I don't have to tell the parents that are out there or the teachers that are attending this meeting tonight how hot those classrooms got. Was it a year or 2 ago where we had to shut down our schools because our classrooms were at 85, 90 degrees without students wearing masks? In addition to that, the guidelines show that you can't use window air conditioning. It has to be central air. Window air conditioning spreads the droplets or spreads the aerosol, so you should not be using those. So without air conditioning, central air conditioning, in rooms that we don't know what the fall will look like in terms of weather and temperatures, and asking students to wear masks. The other issue, and this is where I really need the school committee's support tonight, and you can circle back later and make a vote. The commissioner's medical guidance was that 3-foot distance. However, CDC remains at 6 feet. So if you drop to the bottom bullet, I'm requesting tonight the school committee vote on the distancing guidelines for our district. Is the school committee committed to going with a 6-foot distance per CDC or following the commissioner's guidelines of 3 foot? The commissioner has since said, well, 6 feet is best, but 3 feet's acceptable. My recommendation is that 3 feet's not acceptable for the Swampscott Public Schools. And so we can circle back and discuss that later, but I am looking for school committee input. If school committee comes out with a decision on that point tonight, It's going to help guide the rest of our decisions. Suzanne, could you link on the feasibility study? Go back. So what we were required to do, and has been occurring over the last 2 weeks, is that a feasibility study of all in-person learning within the district. So if you scroll to the top, each one of these pages is a different school. Keep going to the top, Suzanne. Oh, you are at the top, sorry. I gotta hide my panel. So what I tasked the facilities department with is going into every classroom in every building in our district and measuring how many students could be in a classroom at a 6-foot distance, at a 4.5-foot distance, at a 3-foot distance. And so you'll see those numbers in each of the columns here for the high school. If we average those numbers at a 6-foot distance within the classrooms, we could get about 12 students in. At a 4.5-foot distance, we could get about 15 students in. At a 3-foot distance, we could get 20 students in. Scroll to the middle school, please. Again, these are individual. This is all going to be accessible. I send out my superintendent's report so that anybody that wants to see this, it's posted on the website, can go back and look at each of the classrooms. But the averages for the middle school at 6 feet are 12 students, 4.5 feet are 15 students, and 3 feet are 25 students. At Clark, the averages at a 6-foot distance, there's 11 students. At a 4.5-foot distance, there's 15 students. And at a 3-foot distance, we could get 22 students. At Hadley, 6 feet is 9 students, 4.5 feet is 12 students, 3 feet is 20 students. And finally at Stanley, at 6 feet, there's 9 students. At 4.5 feet, there's 13 students. And at 3 feet, there are 23 students. So those are the averages for the school. If you go back to my presentation, Suzanne, if you could click on the medical protocols for responding to COVID. This is another document I put on for your reading. This came out on the 10th, I believe. No, sorry, the 17th, last Friday. And these were protocols that were given to us for scenarios of in school, on the bus, or community in responding to COVID-19 scenarios. It's a pretty lengthy document, but it's one worth reading. I have had a conversation with the chair of the Board of Health yesterday, and she communicated to me that some of these are not following DPH. So there's still some debate about some of the protocols that are within this, but there is a disclaimer at the top that says that this will be a fluid document and this will be updated, but I did link it here so that anyone that wanted to read through it could do that as well. Back to the presentation, Suzanne. Next slide. So the second model, hybrid combination, the considerations that need to be made. Our highest district priority has always been social emotional well-being of our students. This is something that was brought up at public comment as well. There is no reason why this model has to look the same at all 3 levels. It is unrealistic, and it was said at public comment. One size does not fit all in this scenario. Should this model be considered for the fall and revisited in the winter, short-term versus long-term? Who are our most vulnerable learners? K-5, K-6? Our data collection from the spring showed that there were approximately 240 students in grades K through 12 who did not engage in our remote learning platform during the spring. We have to get to those students. And so on top of our most vulnerable learners being, first of all, our special education population, our English language population, our youngest students, and then we have a group of students that were not engaged, that it is our responsibility to get them caught up, to get them engaged or get them trained in being engaged in any kind of remote learning. And again, facilities. Do we rethink the use of our buildings at least through the fall? And one of the things that Suzanne and I were talking about at our vice chair superintendent's meeting is, one of the ideas that has come about is, do we utilize the high school differently? do we utilize the high school for our elementary learners for the fall where there's central air conditioning and we could get more of them in consistently? And do we consider remote learning for our older learners who are successful with it for the spring? And this is my thought in terms of just for the fall. You know, do we do remote learning for the fall? And then once the windows can be opened and our buildings cool, utilize our other buildings. All of these, as I said to the teachers yesterday, are ideas. They're not decisions. They're decisions that the working groups and the school committee are going to make as things unfold. But their rationale for me to submit to DESE on July 31st in my preliminary plans as to why we may be leaning one way or the other. And then there are more considerations, I believe, on the next slide. Thank you. So what does a hybrid look like? We did in that first survey, we talked about, you know, is it an AM and PM session? Since that time, we've talked about, do we have a group A on Monday and Tuesday? And then Wednesday is a remote learning day and a planning day for teachers with deep cleaning of the buildings and then bringing in group B on Thursday and Friday. Or there's the model where you could do 1 week on, 1 week off with group A 1 week, group B the second week. And then we do have to consider what families need in terms of planning and care considerations. And I heard what Joanne said about needing to plan as soon as possible. And the commissioner spoke to that today on our call and said he recognizes that that is a challenge, but it's more important for us to get this right and to be comfortable where we're at. So with our final comprehensive plans not due to August 10th, it would be my hope to get something in before that time so that parents could start to plan. And then the all remote model 3. One of the things that I talked about with the teachers and I've talked about with the union leadership is the fact that our spring remote learning was very unexpected. We spent time deploying devices to teachers, deploying devices to staff, deploying devices to students, training teachers, planning our, developing our remote learning plan. And initially, if you recall, we were closing for a couple of weeks. And as it unfolded, it was longer and longer. So we were always playing catch up. Since that time, you know, we've learned lots of lessons where we do have a phase 4 remote learning plan working group. And we're in a much better position for a more robust remote learning plan. So those are considerations that the groups are going to have to make and the school committee is going to have to make as we move forward. One of the things before I talk about this slide, I do want to mention is the fact that we are at our facilities meeting tomorrow morning talking about the purchasing of the event tents, large event tents to be located at each of the schools to promote outdoor learning. And that conversation will be happening early tomorrow morning. In addition to that, we have ordered plexiglass to be installed in all of the main offices and all of the office spaces. And once we see how that installation goes, we are going to be looking at guidance spaces, nursing spaces, and expanding that more after we see how the installation of this goes. There are lots of products out there that are coming our way in terms of, I got a promotion today for student little cubbies that are see-through for their desks. So there are lots of companies and lots of vendors developing lots of tools for us to use if we were to return to school in person. If you could click on this first link, Suzanne. The commissioner has mentioned there is a frequently asked questions document on the DESE website put out, and it is for all audiences. It's about health and safety, it's superintendent and principal inquiries, and it's parent inquiries. Again, I encourage you to read through this. I tried to pick just the most salient documents to share with you tonight. There are so many documents and so many different opinions to keep up with, but I do think some of the questions in here would be answered. This document didn't have all of the answers that we have now, but it does have the majority of them. So back to that last slide, Suzanne. As I mentioned, there is another family survey coming out soon. I don't want that survey to go out. Dr. Bacon and I spoke this morning about it not going out until we determine what is the distancing guidance that the school committee is going to vote on or commit to. And then we've created a specific email address for further comments and questions. I don't have somebody staffing it yet, so it would be me in between everything else. I think once we get our task force up and running, I can task it off to somebody. But please email your questions or your comments to that 2020 reopen at swampscott.k12.ma.us. That is a specific email address to try to get back to all of you. I was incredibly pleased, and Joanna, I think it may have been your husband. There were Lou who emailed me. There were parents that emailed me tonight and yesterday and today and said they were unable to make tonight's public comment for school committee. And so they shared their thoughts and ideas through email. And we'll compile that with the Padlet that the school committee is keeping right now and making sure we review all of that information. So if I didn't answer questions that you have, it is because we don't have that guidance yet. The information, as I said in the spring, was changing hour by hour. Maybe it's just changing week by week right now, but it is unfolding. I do feel like the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is trying to stay one step ahead of us. In the meantime, we are doing the best we can to analyze the challenges we're going to face with each of these three models. We're going to look to school committee for their guidance as well. And so I hope that this presentation answered some of the questions that may have come up at public comment.
Thanks for that. That was a great idea. The people suggested we swap that. So maybe I should go back and look at the question and answers.
Sure.
And then Karen, you could get that screen back up.
Okay.
Amy has her hand up.
Amy, go ahead.
You're muted.
Amy? Oh.
Sorry about that. I have a message that came in from parent Isabel Key, who says, a couple of comments for tonight's meeting. I have a 5th and 7th grader. Please give parents support in learning the different online platforms. I would be a much better support if I had some or any idea of what my kids were working on. Also, these platforms are standardized, or can each teacher use any resource they feel appropriate? Finally, please support the teachers. I don't want them to feel like they're being sent as sacrifice this fall. I respectfully request you to listen to their needs. Thank you for your volunteer service. So thank you, Isabel.
I would like to also, as part of my superintendent's report, which I took out of order, I want to tell the community who's here tonight that I know the teachers are here with us tonight as well, and I appreciate them being here as attendees. There are a lot of teachers here with us tonight. And one of the things, if there was anything that, if there's a silver lining to what happened during the pandemic, it really was the fact that we got back together, the union and the leadership, and we settled the contract. And from that point on, we've gone back to a really incredible working relationship, and that we are collaborating. We have continued to meet with the Union E-Board weekly to talk about these things and discuss what's going on. It's a very open and collaborative dialogue. And so we know we're gonna face challenges with what them wanting a healthy working environment as much as we do, but those conversations are happening weekly. And they are here tonight so that in support and knowing that we're working collaboratively, and I just need to emphasize that to the community. In addition to that, one of the other points I was going to mention is that I started during the pandemic what we called, actually I will shout out to Katie Porter, she named it Tuesday Talks with the Superintendent. And I have consistently run a webinar on Tuesdays for the entire district faculty and staff. And during the spring, I had probably 250 attendees consistently. Now I do them on Tuesday mornings at 8 in the morning. Yesterday I had 80 attendees live, but I'm recording those sessions and sharing them out with the entire faculty and staff immediately on Tuesday so that they know what's going on. There are no secrets. There's no hidden agenda. This is very collaborative, from custodians to food services to ESPs to administrative assistants to teachers. So I just think those are important points that were made, and you wouldn't know what's going on unless I tell you. So I just wanted to make those points.
Amy, you want to read some more, or I'll read some question and answers?
You go for it. That's it for me.
So I'm going to skip through the ones that were already kind of answered about IEPs, or maybe riding the bus to school answer is going to be forthcoming. Someone has an idea, Carl Forbes, about maybe we should think about kids that are learning the same subjects and topics remain in the same rooms as pods, and teachers would be the ones that move from room to room. That could help with lunch times to have the same kids remain together. And if we're going to do some days in and some days at home, we should make sure that siblings will be in school on the same day as well. Tim has 2 kids at Clark School. First, he says something nice and commends the efforts of the town, which we all appreciate, and applauds the teachers. And then he says, due to my wife's occupation as a nurse, we will be in regular potential exposure to COVID-19. We take every precaution now, and we continue to self-quarantine. In March, she nearly died, wow, and spent 5 days in the ICU. We take this virus incredibly serious and absolutely do not want to risk this virus breaking out within the school. Can you please comment? Oh, I'm just losing it. Hold on. Can you please comment on public health considerations and guidance on what safeguards the school system is doing to guarantee the safety of the children and our educators? I mean, I think superintendent started to address this with the DESE guidelines and the public health document, and I think that will be more information forthcoming about that. What can we expect a response plan would look like in the event of an outbreak following the reopening? I don't know. I think that's something you have to develop, right, Pam?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a parent here who's not ready to send her children who are both asthmatic. Would agree that working families need more time to make plans for the year as well as prepare young kids for the transition. Heidi wonders, why can't we have a phased reopening of the school as we've had phased reopenings of the state? As difficult as it's been, it's worked. The numbers don't lie. Miss Knowles put up a...
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things when I talked about the commissioner coming out with a definitive calendar, we built in through the CARES Act funds to bring teachers back early, to train them in safety protocols, to train them in whatever was needed. There's been a lot of talk with the commissioner and a lot of push for him to reduce the school year requirement from 180 days to something less, so that we could really thoroughly train our staff and provide the safety trainings that would be needed. In addition to that, there's a real push for them to reduce time on learning. And if the time on learning, right now we're committed to 900 hours, but 990 at the high school. If those hours, we were to be given dispensation on what the hours of time on learning would have to be, then that would give us the leeway to be creative with some kind of phased opening. But with the conversation with the commissioner today, we talked about, would a phased opening be an option? And he said, for that July 31st submission, everything's on the table. Submit what you think is your best plan. And maybe that is that we're remote for a few weeks, and then we bring kids in small groups or one at a time to meet with their teacher, to analyze their tech skills, to make those connections again. Everything is on the table. So the answer to that is it's a possibility. And those are things that are going to need to be considered through the working groups and through the task force and we just need to put everything on the table when we submit for that preliminary submission on July 31st. And we're prepared to do that.
Thanks. There's a comment from HG saying, I would like not to pit grades against grades. Virtual learning is very hard on the older grades as well. High schoolers are graded and the stakes are high. Special needs students are often integrated, so not having in-person for all the students affects them as well. And a second question is to make sure that students that choose in-person will have a Zoom option in case they get sick or must quarantine. And also time for extra help virtually or in person for all grades is important. And thank you to the teachers. Matt Straub says, technology for K through first grade should be a priority. If Chromebooks are not provided, then weekly or monthly packets should be available for pickup and mail. Also, the YMCA has providing care for essential workers throughout this COVID and has had 0 transmissions. Perhaps we can learn from their methods, distancing procedures, and sanitation protocols. Mark Miller says, I'm making a comment, but ask in the form of question. Moving forward, if the school committee is seeking public comments from informed parents in a live session, can you please share the presentation? Oh, this is what we did. Sorry, I should have read ahead. Evidence from Henry Scott says evidence indicates that at least 6 feet should be maintained for social distance. Where is the study for 3 feet?
I can tell you that.
You know that, Scott. Go ahead.
No, there is. The commissioner will direct you to the Department of Elementary and Secondary website where he rolls out the plans, and there is there's either 1 page or 2 pages of sightings of the medical research that was done. I don't have that handy. My apologies.
No, it's okay. Melinda Walsh wonders, when will kindergarten assignments be sent out? We would like to know what school will be involved in. I think I also saw a question, I think someone emailed it actually, about kindergarten screenings. Do we have any information about kindergarten?
We do not.
Okay. How do we join or apply to be parent members of the working groups?
The first 2 groups are established with a cross-section, but I would encourage you, as I said earlier, to reach out to your building principal, to be a member of the school-based, really where the rubber's gonna meet the road with the planning and implementation of the plan.
Okay, and Sturgeon Ward has a comment which is interesting. I'm an English major, not a mathematician, but my K-12 education taught me simple math. Based on current data, the COVID death rate for children currently hovers at 0.0016%. That's far less than 1%, even with rounding. However, with approximately 2,300 students in the district, I'm curious to know which 3.64 or 4 students with rounding is the state, the district, and the town willing to sacrifice? That one's tough. And Hillary Fouts asks, I'm confused. Why does the school committee decide the number of feet tonight? In other words, why isn't the whole committee made up of parents, teachers, educators helping to decide this? Our school committee is not made up of doctors and nurses, therefore they are no more qualified to decide than the larger committee. As you mentioned, we will be having at the larger committee at the district and school level.
I would say it's the school committee's decision because the school committee votes on the plan.
Thank you. Sturgeon Ward says, MCAS and other standardized assessments focus on behaviorist approaches to learning. What is the Swampscott doing to incorporate cognitive and constructive approaches as well? Good question. Jillian Jacobs says, as a high schooler, I personally struggled with remote learning this spring, as did several of my friends. It also makes me scared because it's more challenging for us to get good grades and understand. We often had assignments to do without having been taught first or only with video. And Leanne says, you don't need to say this to the full web. Figures and 21st students, sorry. She's questioning if we have data on the 240 students who didn't participate. And
we do, and it's minimal. Yeah. It's absolutely minimal. We do know how many families that don't have internet. I think it was 4 of the district. But there were some challenges with families still, a minimal amount, but still some challenges with families who are having difficulty with both students and adults being on at the same time while parents were trying to work and students were trying to do remote learning. So we do have that data.
So we have another question. You sort of addressed this. Are we going to allow families and students to decide whether they'd like to go in person or attend classes from home or day by day? And
we are hoping to have a commitment for, say, term 1. In our survey, we will put out the preference of what parents have, but you could switch back and forth. All parents have the right to continue with remote. That's a done deal. We would like a commitment so that we could plan for, say, the month of September. Whatever format you commit to that for a few weeks. And rather than having a student come in, a student stay home. So we're working out the details of that, and some of that will be in the survey.
Mrs. Hartman, our school nurse, the middle school, and Board of Public Health wants us to know that the South Korea study looked at symptomatic children only. So while it's a valuable study, you cannot completely hang your hat on this one study. Many younger children are asymptomatic, but can still be infectious. As a new virus, we're still learning information all the time, and we know that. And I got an email from someone earlier today saying the reason why there's no kids, the numbers are low in kids is because we did such a good job quarantining them and they're not in school. And then Heidi says, a key in making decisions on what kind of hybrid model would be best will be that the mask requirements what the mask requirements will be. There's no information on what is truly safe regarding children and extended mask usage. Please be prepared to share where you will be getting your information on how many hours a day is safe, how many breaks are necessary, and how long those breaks will be. Let's not assume older kids will be fine wearing masks for hours on end when even we adults want to rip them off after a brief trip to the grocery store. Alice Stein echoes the concern for air quality and overall sanitation of the schools, and how can parents engage to assist with facilities hygiene? So tactics like donating HEPA air purifiers to classrooms or as a means to improve air quality, as well as parents volunteering with cleaning or any sort of grassroots effort like that could cultivate healthy environments for the students. Maggie Raymond says, if we don't have a school assignment yet, who should we reach out to about being parent volunteer for the back to school working group?
I actually can answer that. I would
Right.
say, without being assigned to a school, you could probably reach out to Mrs. Raymond, the Director of Student Services. There'll be a group of quote unquote preschool parents. And so it would be fine for you to jump in there. I do know she's unable to attend this evening, but if you reach out to Martha Raymond, she will figure out where we could put you, and appreciate your volunteering.
All right, Sturgeon has another comment. Time on learning really sounds like Carnegie Unit 21st Century Learning is about competencies and objectives. It will take much more time to learn to shoot 90% from the free throw line than other people who understand the geometry and physics behind the shot. Time for the district to take the lead. Emily Silly, also on the Board of Health and school nurse, says, will all classes continue, including specials and electives? Maybe some could be found to be less important and could be put on hold, leaving more time to be spent on the core courses. Maybe not as all required for credit in the end, but I'm assuming gym classes may not be happening during this time.
I can tell you that the working group under Dr. Bacon is analyzing that right now, and she's working with the teachers that are on that committee to figure out which route we're going to go, whether we keep the electives, whether we keep the specialists, or we just focus on the core classes. We do know at the elementary level, literacy and numeracy are key areas, but that is up for discussion and is being discussed as we speak. So,
okay.
But
and
I
Jen
think,
Wiseman
but
has.
Can I chime in here?
Yeah.
I think to the question before about not pitting students against one another and what's good for one, also what's good for one isn't good for another. I mean, I've heard from so many, particularly young parents who think, oh my God, if only I could just get my kid to a gym class. So, I think that these are things that should come up in the working groups, because the high schoolers might not need a gym class, but those second graders probably really do.
Right. That's like not one size fits all thing. Jen Wiseman is a parent at Hadley with a first and third grader and wanted to raise these concerns, anticipating there is remote learning this year. We've heard you reference the need to address remote learning, but did not hear anything about remote instructions, and would encourage the district to explore ways to provide more direct instruction than what occurred in the spring. Secondly, we recognize there is a growing achievement gap and would encourage the district to share how they anticipate addressing this in the years ahead. 3, we would encourage the superintendent and school principals to over communicate in the weeks and months ahead and provide regular updates. Jay says, I currently have 4 kids in the Swampscott school system, 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and a preschooler. We had to return the Chromebooks, but if we open to partial learning, would we be getting Chromebooks back? If we decide to do virtual learning, would the school share their curriculum with parents in order to be successful at it?
So remember, we're going one-to-one grades 2 through 12. With the Chromebooks, we are also in Martha Seibert's presentation under my superintendent's report. She's going to be talking about the funding that we're getting and where we're putting what we're purchasing with that. And part of what we're purchasing is iPads. So we're not sure yet, are those going to be disseminated to K1? Will they be available for use? But the Chromebooks will be going back. They had to be brought in for servicing, so to speak, and we will be setting up distribution. So all of that has to occur while we're trying to roll out the plans as well. So all hands are on deck.
All right, I'm sorry I'm reading through these really quickly, but all the comments that came in on the question and the answer, we're gonna print out and forward to the task force. So they'll be looked at a little more closely. I'm gonna do one last one and then go to the people that are attending on Zoom. As a household with 2 working parents, we struggled with the required work for our first grader. Any thoughts sending out the assignments for the week on Friday so parents can assist with schoolwork if they choose to over the weekend? As thoughts. And then I'm going to go to the people with their hand raised. There's someone that says 977221. You're unmuted if you want to ask your question or make your comment. Hello? It's so hard when people don't have their name. All right, let's try. Did that work? 977221.
No, they're still muted. Oh, no, they're not.
Not muted now.
Hello? All right, how about Heather? Do you want to try? Heather with your hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to make a comment about the 240 students that were graded as unengaged. My daughter was one of them. And as a parent, I thought I was doing all the right things. I emailed the teachers every single week. My daughter was falling behind. We talked to the guidance counselor, the principal. We were engaged. We were engaged as a family and she was engaged as a student. So she may have gotten the same, generic grade as students who never even showed up for one meeting or did one assignment. And so I guess I'm concerned, like as a parent, how do you train us to know that we are doing the right things? And how do you tell a student whose teachers and parents were telling her that she was doing the best she could, that her teachers were there for her, that when the grade came, it looked like it wasn't good enough. So you go back to remote learning and you already have a student who's discouraged, who thinks that their hard work is gonna be not good enough again.
I think you bring up an incredibly valid point, and I think we have to do a better job on our end. I got a message in the middle of this with a previous comment that we currently have 3 parent trainings scheduled for August. But I think in terms of communication with the engaged and unengaged, we could do better. And with remote learning moving forward, it will be a requirement. There will be grades, there will be feedback. And so as someone said to me this week, we were in crisis remote learning, and now we're much better prepared to do remote learning. And there would be grades and there would be feedback. But I do hear your concern, and we can do a better job as a district.
Thank you.
Leanne, I just unmuted you.
Hear me?
Leanne?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So one, I'd like to reiterate what Heather just said about the student not being engaged.
Oh no.
My daughter did have issues with I guess, submitting her work, and that's why she got not engaged. But you had mentioned that you're going to do some trainings for parents. I hope at that time when you have that training that we could have the Chromebook, because what we found is we had one Chromebook from the school and one Apple iPad or Apple laptop that we had for our other child that is ours. And we as parents, my husband and I, both had difficulty with how to work the Chromebooks. I mean, they are smaller and different than the iPad, Apple computer that my other daughter was using. And as a parent, I had no idea how to help my daughter. And so if we had the Chromebooks when we went over and did these trainings with our child and the school district, it would help us, I know me personally, to help then my daughter later in the school district, in the year. And my last statement is, when I wrote that comment about the 240 students, it was not to ask you if they were engaged. I am also on a school board stuff with Somerville because that's where we used to live. And something came out that the school district helped families who were not able to afford internet in their home be able to get the internet to help their students. So my statement is, if there are still families that cannot afford internet in their home and we are still on a remote learning kind of scenario for the fall, perhaps you guys can get in touch with Somerville and ask how they are able to help these families that cannot afford it, because the school district is helping them. So maybe that's a way that some of these students, maybe that were not engaged at all, maybe it is a problem with the internet for the family. I don't know, obviously. But if that is the case, maybe the school district could help them with however Somerville is dealing with it with their families. That was my last statement.
That's some great feedback. Suzanne, can you give Latanya Mackey-Knowles permission to speak? Latanya is our Director of Technology and Innovation and Digital Learning within the district. And I think she could add some value in here. And I do see that we have a few more hands raised, but if you give her permission to speak, that would be great. Latanya, put your hand up. You'll bump to the top.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I've been listening at home. So many amazing questions here and so many people watching. We are doing so much planning, just like with the reopening, how we're going to get those devices to parents, how we're going to train parents, what that's going to look like. Virtual training, we're doing pickup times at night. So we're developing the schedule, and that's going to be going through central office next week just to make sure that we're all together. Dr. Bacon, the Director of Teaching and Learning, and I will be doing the trainings on not just the Chromebooks, but answering questions about Google Classroom, Zoom, Aspen accounts. There's a whole bunch of things to help us get digital so that we don't have paper processes in the fall. And also to answer the question about devices for all, the iPads that Superintendent Angelakis mentioned, those are planned for K-1, but we are in a big crisis across the world, and so computers are at a premium. And we did a lot of ordering in May. We were thinking ahead, and as soon as we heard about grants, we tried to go ahead and put in orders. So we're scheduled to get them, but we're still waiting for all the devices. So the schedule for rolling them out and who gets to pick up a Chromebook when is still being thoughtfully done and very carefully. And there will be a time when we reach out to parents, and there'll be a lot of communication coming through email and through the superintendent's communication channel soon. Along with the schedule for pickup of Chromebooks in August, we also want to make sure that everybody can pick them up at the same time, so that if you have children in different schools, you're not coming back on 3 different days. And so we're looking at staffing. What does the protocol look like? What forms need to be signed before that? And then the last person who spoke was talking about the internet. We've been on investigating hotspots and internet for months now, and looking at grants that cover the cost, because it can be upwards of $20,000 a year to get internet to families that need them. So while we had 4 people say they don't have internet, that's not the actual reflection, because that's just the people that responded to the survey. And some people didn't respond to the survey because they don't have internet. So there's a lot of principal engagement there, where they're calling families and discussing with them. And then we need to figure out like how to get those things into homes. So there's so much going on behind the scenes. Please keep those comments going in case something slipped through the cracks, because the groupthink is so important. But I do want everyone to know that we're on this, we're doing our best, and we will be communicating a lot about technology and what it's going to look like. And yes, for the parent that asked about the Chromebook coinciding with the training. We have the trainings will be scheduled at night from 7 to 8:30. We're going to do a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday evening just for August during Chromebook week pickups. And then there'll also be an opportunity when you pick up the Chromebook, if you need assistance and you bring in your child, that there'll be a way for us to socially distance and answer some questions. But we will be checking that everybody knows how to log on, that they have their passwords and usernames. So lots of stuff coming, and I just wanted to address that because I can feel some of the anxiety in some of these questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Latanya. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, so how about Dan B? It has his hand raised.
Hi, good evening. Dan Bertrand with Hadley. My son is going into first grade, and I'm actually the vice president of the PTO. Bear with me. I've been jotting down some just thoughts with listening to everybody speak and some from the presentation. So the first thing I just wanted to verify that July 31st, the district has to deliver their plan to the state. Is that correct?
We have to deliver 3 preliminary plans. We have to articulate what our remote plan would look like, what our in-person plan would look like, and what our hybrid plan would look like, and the challenges that we would face in any of those scenarios. What it's trying to do is inform the state as to what direction districts are leaning. Our actual plans are not due till August 10th.
And who are those plans due to? That's the school committee that's going to make the decision on August 10th?
The school committee will be voting on the ultimate plan for the district between the July 31st preliminary submission, probably the first week in August before it goes back to the state.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next thing I had kind of follows suit with that is you talked a lot about the task force at the school level. When is that going to be implemented? Is that in the 31st or July 31st to the 1st, or are they waiting on the school committee to make the decision and then they're going to start convening and start planning and trying to implement the plan that was agreed upon?
Great question. My directive to the principals today was in the next week or so, they should have a kickoff meeting with their teams.
Excellent. And is there a deadline for them to have a plan based off of whatever guidance that you give them?
There hasn't been a deadline established yet. I'm not saying.
Okay. And I'm just asking because obviously I think a lot of parents' concerns are is the fact that like myself and my wife, we're both back full time.
Right.
So as though we completely understand the decision, at hand and how important it is, we also need to be able to make sure that we establish that communication with our employers. I'm currently active duty. My wife's in law enforcement. So it's a difficult, specifically for us, not saying that it isn't for the rest of the community, to be able to have a conversation in regards to some of the flexibility we may or may not be presented based off of the plan that is being presented to us. So that's kind of, I just want to kind of get
that is on my radar. I'm very sensitive to that in all of this work.
Yes, ma'am. So a couple of things, and I appreciate you giving me some time. What I noticed was the resources that are available, especially via the internet, was extremely challenging because some of them, they weren't on the same platform. So some of the links that you had specifically, I guess, in the kindergarten classes would take you to a PDF or would take you to a Word document. Some of them would work properly, some of them wouldn't. I think that especially at the younger levels, having workbooks potentially developed or created, I should say, so that way the younger kids can establish and still develop those skills with actually writing instead of just having a piece of technology in their hand for hours at a time, potentially, to try to meet the requirements. So that's just one comment I wanted to make towards that. I know if you.
That's what we're looking for. That's great feedback.
Yes, ma'am. Also, you would mention the requirements and grades being introduced for this upcoming year, I guess. And I'm not so concerned about my, first grader. This would probably be for the older children, is that for those that are struggling, I mean, obviously they're not getting, potentially, I should say, not getting that one-on-one time with the teacher at school to be able to do that. So are we looking at plans to ensure that, you know, although we are having a grading system, that we're taking into consideration the dynamics of, you know, the, you know, learning environment, if you will, that they're producing this type of work, and is that going to be reflected for them moving forward? And I guess for the seniors, how does that impact them going forward? And that doesn't need to be answered right now. I just, you know, just thinking of it on the top of my head.
I just want to say that there is, we just received a grant that I was also going to talk about in my superintendent's report. And Dr. Bacon's going to speak about that a little bit, but we are very aware of the students in terms of where we need to pick up their skills. If you recall, in the spring, we were tracking the essential skills. And so we are very much aware of where gaps might be and what we might need to do to fill those gaps. So that's just a broad statement. I understand I don't have to answer every specific question.
I think what would be helpful potentially, and I don't know if the surveys are already created, but maybe allowing for a comment block for parents to kind of, you know, the yes and no questions. And obviously a lot of the information is, you know, leads to some of the decision making that you guys have to, you know, conduct, but allowing maybe, you know, to expound upon some of the answers that they have in a comment block on the end, or being able to you know, have an opportunity to also write a comment in the email once it's sent forward. I don't know if that would be helpful, which would minimize maybe some of your email traffic that you're going to get from now until then to a decision that's being made.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Lastly, I think that, and I don't know, are you, and I say you specifically because obviously I'm on the phone with you, but is all the superintendents within the districts taking in consideration some of the preschools and some of the daycare facilities that have been opening that are going through the same challenges that we potentially could face moving into the school year? And I know that the age group is different, but obviously the challenges are, you know, very similar, especially with how children are entering into, you know, into the school.
Yes, we're looking at everything. And that is the greatest thing about having your colleagues and meeting with them. So we're all looking at the same things. Whatever one forgets, somebody else picks up. So we're considering everything.
Last thing, and I know it's probably more deeper into some of the DESE guidance, but if a teacher gets exposed during the day, or if we find that there's you know, teachers are symptomatic or a child is symptomatic, I know that we really need to get into the details of it. How is that going to affect, you know, that teacher is going to have to probably be quarantined, and is there going to be a pool, I guess, of substitute teachers or approved teachers that have been tested to be able to, you know, short notice, go to the school to pick up on, you know, this, you know, the curriculum, etc., to be able to help out? And I guess the same question would go for the nurse. I mean, I know our resources are spread thin. So if there's one nurse per the school, and, you know, God forbid if something happens where he or she may get sick, is there a plan being in place so that there's somebody to cover down that day and then moving forward during that quarantine time? And again, you don't have to answer this. I know it's probably going to come out, but that's just a couple thoughts that I had.
They're great thoughts and things that we're all working on.
All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. All right. How about Swati Kelkar? You're unmuted. Had your hand up for so long. Hopefully you're still there.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
And hopefully everyone can hear me. Good evening. Yeah. So my I guess concern was, if we decide to go remote, about the content, the academic rigor, if you will the students be assessed by an outside standardized test so that we know that they're learning at grade level? Like, would the MCASs still be held on schedule, or how do we know? As in, you know, I would like teachers to focus more on the 3 R's, you know, the numeracy and literacy and things like that, more than having open-ended projects that don't provide closure. Like, for example, I had trouble with the vacation project that my son did at Hadley in 4th grade. It was very open-ended and I didn't feel like it provided closure in the end. I would much rather see them working and drilling on basic math facts.
The commissioner has not done away with MCAS for next year as of this time. He has not said that MCAS is going away at this time. In fact, he said, I'm not saying MCAS is going away at this time. So that answer is still to be determined.
Suzanne?
And sorry.
No, Swati, you go ahead.
All right. And just another little tip, and this is probably, I should bring it up with the teachers, is when they give links, and Dan just brought this up, not have so many links to different websites that students have to go to and get a login and a password every time, and remember that for different websites, to have all information in one place, because it gets all over the place. And I feel at least the younger children thrive on structure more than anything else. And so that's another thing. And also include solution sets with their math, work packets or whatever it is, English. Also include solution sets so that parents can check off their answers right that evening instead of waiting for that once a week remote meeting with the teacher. So that's another tip. Maybe they can include the solution sets with the packets.
Thank you.
Suzanne, I have a question that came in.
Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Enza Sheehan from Clark School asks, wondering if the use of good old-fashioned workbooks is being considered. It would get kids away from the screen, would ease the burden of having to print everything, and it would consolidate the infinite paper clutter at home. I think that what's interesting about that question too is, what I'm hearing some other parents say is that just because we are working remotely, does that really mean that everything should be electronic?
You have any other texts, Amy?
Nope.
Okay, someone asked, what are we doing about people who cannot wear masks due to past trauma, respiratory airway issues, mask acne, glasses, fogging, hearing impairments? Is there guidance for that?
The guidance is that everyone in grades 2 through 12 are encouraged to wear masks.
Yeah.
There will be medical excuses. In fact, they're even encouraging K1 to wear masks, but there's no directive on that as of now.
All right, that'll be something to consider.
Yeah.
Tim said, have considerations been made to ensure that students on premises and students learning remotely do not have advantages or treated differently than others? Are we certain that one or the other won't be discriminated against? Consideration for that. Henry Scott asked, how is the school going to address the emotional needs and the mental health challenges that all these adjustments are going to trigger on students? Lori says, I'm the parent of a senior who had a very challenging time with distance learning, especially because she had technology issues with Google Classroom. The first semester will be especially challenging for seniors as they prepare to apply for colleges. Alice Stein says, Comcast has a program called Technology Comes Home to help families unable to provide internet access or technology to their children. This is a program readily available for families in need, and Swampscott should form a partnership with Comcast to even the learning playing field for our entire community. I'm sure Ms. Mackie Knowles is on that. Lori, continuation of previous comment, she said, is it technologically possible for classes to be live as this Zoom meeting is? My daughter would share Jillian's comments that it's more challenging to learn from videos. We're very thankful to the teachers who worked with us while my daughter had to redo assignments and work on other ways to submit work when the Google account wasn't working. Heidi has a common question here, or comment. It says, for communication during remote learning, consistency is key. We had the best teachers during remote learning who were consistently emailing and posting, but assignments and Zoom meetings and follow-ups were all sent from multiple people and posted to multiple sites. Even those of us who drive our kids crazy because we're excessively organized found it overwhelming to keep up with it all. Communication is necessary and appreciated, but having it come from one person and at a set time and day would go a long way towards facilitating engagement and alleviating anxiety for both kids and parents. Mrs. Bacon, do you have something you want to say to this? Or Dr. Bacon, sorry. Are you going to address this in your presentation?
I'm not going to specifically address that in my presentation tonight, but on many of the issues that I've been hearing from parents or community members about things that were challenging about remote learning in the spring, or things that were expressed by parents in the May survey we sent out. So the planning group that's been working since then is trying to acknowledge and create some better systems and protocols to address many of these concerns.
Super. Spalding Shepherd asks, if learning is online, I think, or says, if learning is online, I think it's important to try to facilitate peer-to-peer learning and engagement. Not only can technology help facilitate this, but teachers need training on how to best leverage this technology. Increased peer-to-peer strategies will help with student engagement and enhance their learning. And that's a parent of a Hadley 4th grader and 8th grader. How is the district leveraging tutors to support students whose parents work? If that's even something happening. Katie Holt asks, will there be a mandatory quarantine stay at home if family chooses to travel to hotspots or states that Massachusetts has determined quarantine is required? If we're going to have it in person, we must be able to trust that families are being held to the state's requirements. I think that was part of the DESE guidelines, right? Yeah, anyway, Tim says, how is medical confidentiality going to be respected during a scenario when we all will need to do rigid contact tracing in the event of a positive COVID-19 case? All right, that's it for the online questions right now. Oh, someone asked about mask breaks and how often and how long. And let's see, we don't have any more people with their hand raised. Anyone else? Amy? Wow, that was a lot of really great input.
Just a note, Pam, the superintendent's Zoom froze, so I think she logged out and is logging back in.
Okay, so to the people who are attending tonight, all your comments are recorded because we're recording this meeting. Everything that's been texted or on the Q&A has also been captured in hard copies so that we can share it with the task force. And then hopefully people will feel comfortable emailing the superintendent with additional thoughts and concerns. I mean, this is tough because, you know, even though we all have unique situations that are informing our decisions whether or not we want our kids in school and how we want it to be, we're all sort of sharing the same space in this anxiety-ridden space. So I think that hopefully you can participate in some of the task forces, but I think also please stay on this meeting tonight because I think we're going to learn some more from the superintendent, and I think we have a business administrator report next coming. And please, you're always welcome to continue to email the school committee with your comments and your concerns. This is tough for all of us. And, you know, we've never, as a school district, faced a challenge like this before. So thank you, everyone, for participating. It's been really nice to see so many teachers and parents, especially just all aged parents as well. It's just really great, the engagement. So is the superintendent back? I'm gonna go back to my screen. Sorry.
I don't see her back.
That's okay. So while we have a minute, I was negligent at the beginning of this meeting. We started a brand new sort of FY 2021 year, and we have a new school committee member, and I am so sorry, John. John and I both I got reelected and he got elected to be on the school committee, and usually we start the meeting with an introduction and everything, and I'm so sorry, John. Thank you for running and thanks for joining our committee, and if you'd like to say anything, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne, appreciate it. Just that believe it or not, I'm very excited to be here. I had no idea any of this was going to happen when I pulled the papers, but very excited to be here. Just very quickly wanted to thank my wife and daughters who supported me from the beginning on this, and also just the friends and neighbors who supported me during the campaign. Thank you to them. And again, just anxious to jump in and get to work. Thank you.
And I can't remember, John, are your daughters are at Stanley?
Actually, they were at Stanley. I have one daughter who's going to 10th grade, and I have another daughter who's going to 7th grade.
Oh, super. Well, welcome to this committee. Nothing like trial by fire.
Thank you.
So since the superintendent is not on this meeting right now, can we move ahead and business administrator report, Ms. Seibert?
We actually were going to table the business administrator report until the next meeting for that update, but there is a report, and you have the grants presentation that I was going to do tonight. And then just as a point, Ms. Kellikar Swati is still open, so there's some background noise because she hasn't been muted.
Sorry, thanks, I got it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's how bad my hearing is. Okay,
that's the one, yes.
All right.
So, as everyone knows, the federal government has been putting a lot of money at this issue, at this virus, and we're very thankful that a lot of money has flowed our way. So I just wanted to talk about some of the grant opportunities that we have taken advantage of. The first one being that the larger CARES grant, the town's allocation was approximately $1.3 million, and they have been very generous in supporting a lot of the technology needs in the school. The school's CARE grant, which is called the ESSER grant, our allocation for that was only, and I say only, was $149,000, and that was really based off of Title I, which is the poverty index and high needs, and so we did not get a large portion of ESSER funds. Larger districts like Lynn and Lawrence, big urban districts received a larger proportion of that CARES grant. The Remote Learning Technology Essentials grant, we applied for that one. That application was submitted yesterday. That's a matching grant. And so our grant application was for $117,000 to support our iPads for our K-1 devices and to support hotspots to support our families that do have internet access issues. But we don't know how much we're going to get awarded because that grant is also somewhat of an entitlement grant. It's going to be based on Chapter 70 Foundation formula. So I don't know how much we'll actually get from that grant, but it's worth submitting an application for. Oh, I'm not done yet. Can you go back?
Okay.
That's okay. The Coronavirus Relief Fund, that's a larger one. That one was $225 per pupil. It's about $473,000. And that's significant funds. And that the application deadline for that is August 31st. And we're working on that one. And then Dr. Bacon spoke briefly about the summer vacation learning grant. The superintendent mentioned that one as well. That was an $11,000 grant. So combined, if you go to the next slide, we have applied for or received $1.1 million in funding to help us navigate this crisis. So from the Town's CARE Act, the town allocation, they included many of the school department's needs in that grant submission. They included 1,115 Chromebook devices. which coupled with our inventory that was good, as you know, Dr. Latanya Mackey-Knowles presented at school committee when we were doing the budget that a lot of our inventory was beyond its useful life, but we do still have useful Chromebooks in our inventory. So these devices, partnered with our devices that we already own, are going to allow us to be one-to-one for grades 2 through 12. And that's significant. The committee knows that we provided meals to not only students, but seniors and adult members of the community. The Town's Care Act reimbursed our school lunch fund, which was necessary because it's a federal account. They allocated about $44,000 for PPE needs. That includes masks, gloves, face shields, gowns. DESE came out with guidance back in, gosh, there's so much guidance from DESE right now. I want to say it was in mid-June about what we should have on hand for starting school. I know one of the comments from one of the parents was to have masks on hand, and it is our DESE's expectation that students will come to school with masks, but we also know that there are going to be incidences where a mask rips or someone chews it or it breaks or they forget it. So, so we do have child-sized masks. We have mask teachers. So we have procured a wealth of PPE. And then they also included in their allocation the funds to have 3 staff training days. And the superintendent alluded to this earlier, that we're not sure if the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is going to waive the 180-day requirement and make it 177. So those 3 days can count as part of the contract days, or if we're going to have to do 3 days on our own prior to the start of the school year. So this is if we have to do 3 days prior to the start of the school year outside of the contract. And so if DESE waives that requirement, then this expenditure would essentially go away. Next slide, please. So the ESSER or CARES Act fund, this was, it provides districts with equitable service to students. It is allocated as part of Title I, or using that formula. We elected to carry that $149,000 forward into FY21. We could have accessed it in FY20, but we didn't have a need for it then. We knew we'd have a need with all the uncertainty in FY21. And Dr. Bacon is working on our application right now, and it's not due until August 14th. So we'll have more information at a future committee meeting on how we're going to use those funds. The Remote Learning Technology Essentials Grant, this is the grant that I mentioned earlier. It's a $25 million pot of funds that are available to districts across the state. It is a matching grant. I'm unsure how much money we're going to get for it. These grants are not really sustainable. They're for one-time purchases. We can go back and use them for expenditures prior to July 1st, but we're not going to. We're going to use our funds for FY21 needs. And this grant was submitted on Tuesday, and it was for 300 iPads and a number of hotspots to help support families that don't have internet. The COVID Relief Fund, this is the $473,000 that I mentioned. It was $225 per student. There really are only 3 requirements for this. Are they necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency? They were not accounted for in our budget, and the expenses have to have been incurred between March 1st and December 20th. So this does have a shelf life of December 20th. One of the things that we may use some of this funds for, another question that came from a parent, and it was a good question about transportation. So we're very fortunate that we don't have a lot of in-district transportation that's mandated because our schools and our community is so compact, being only 3 square miles. We do have significant out-of-district transportation. And so some of these $473,000, some of this funds can be used to help if we have to have additional buses for out-of-district transportation. So right now, we're looking to use this to match whatever is not funded in the remote learning to subsidize the iPads, potentially some transportation, and other needs that may arise. So we have plenty of time to figure out what we're going to use this for. We don't have to apply until the deadline for application on this one is August 31st. So this gives us an opportunity to really assess what our needs are. The tents were another thing that we were thinking about charging to this grant. And then the next slide, summer vacation learning. Again, this grant can be used to support the development and implementation of weekend learning programs, which is how we submitted our grant application. We opted for a weekend learning model that would run 7 weeks between October and November. And I think Dr. Bacon will probably speak more to this at a future meeting. And then just if you guys had any questions was really my last one. Just really wanted to let you know that it's a smorgasbord of grants out there right now. And there's no short supply of funds to try and help us navigate this. And the state really wants us to do everything we can to support all of our students and make sure that there's equity in terms of technology. That's their big push right now. With the remote learning, we had to sign an attestation form basically saying that we were one-to-one. The state wants to get everyone there. So I'll pitch it to you guys if you have questions. I see Ms. O'Connor.
I just have a question about how you find all of these opportunities, because I would imagine it's pretty broad, and if that's something you need help with.
Thank you. I find them because I am, like the superintendent, incredibly tapped into our professional organizations, and DESE is not going to let any of us miss these. We get, simply because I'm one of the people on our federal grants, Dr. Bacon, myself, Mrs. Raymond, the superintendent, anytime there's a grant, we get a generic email from DESE saying this grant opportunity is out there. So some of these they're being pushed out to us as well. You know, the superintendent gets to spend her days on calls with the commissioner. Yesterday, I spent my day on a call with the Attorney General's office and the Inspector General's office talking about emergency procurement and what we can and can't do. So, you know, we're all being supported by the various state agencies and by our professional organizations. So
there is a weekly memo that comes to superintendents and other district leaders that summarizes things that happen during the week. So not only do we get specific and direct emails, we get a summary memo, and within that memo there's links. So, you know, DESE has a lot of challenges during these times, but they are outstanding at pushing this our way, calling it to our attention repeatedly, and is just taking the time and having the manpower to apply for them. And I have a phenomenal team that's done that. So we're really fortunate.
So I guess my question is to you, Superintendent, is do you feel like you have the bandwidth? And is your team, you know, I know everybody's taxed, but do you have enough people to help with this?
I think we've been doing a fabulous job. That's why I asked Ms. Seibert to present tonight, because there's so much coming at us so fast and furious. She and I met yesterday, and when I stopped to think about all the money we've gone after and we've gotten to help us through this crisis, it was important that she brought it to the committee tonight. And I apologize, I got kicked out of my laptop and I missed, I don't know if Dr. Bacon went back and went through the summer vacation, but we've talked about that a little bit here. So I apologize, I got knocked off.
I have a quick question. So that money for like the 3 days of teacher professional development, I mean, does our contract or does the teacher contract allow us to ask them to come back early?
We put that in way back, not knowing that there was a potential for the commissioner to waive the days.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get them back, we would have to pay them. But knowing that we would have to go over safety protocols and train, it was something that we allocated, not knowing. Now I'm hearing there may be 5 days from the state. I'm hearing it may go down to 175. That gives us 5 days to train staff. Then we wouldn't need that, and that money could be used for something else. But you know, if we were asking them to come in order to train for safety protocols, in order to be safe, I imagine if people were being paid, they would come in willingly. But to ask them to go outside their contract and not be paid was what we were anticipating. Now, if the commissioner reduces the number of days, then we have 5 days built into our school year.
I was just wondering if I mean, it seems horrible to make it mandatory if like you've planned an August vacation and all of a sudden you have to cut it short and come in, because I just didn't know how that would work. So
I don't know that anybody's really truly going away this summer. So
yeah, no, I get that.
Martha, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
On the grants, is there any room for, I think someone brought it up in regards to the school nurses. I know that the town is doing a position for the public health nurse, but is there any room to, I can't imagine one nurse per building is gonna be adequate. I mean, Marion Hartman, I think, has what, 770, 780 in that building?
I think there's about there's just under 700 at the middle school and about 700, a little over 700 at the high school. If you go back to the very first slide that listed all the different grants, it'd be easier for me to speak from that, Suzanne, thank you. So, so the remote learning, the coronavirus relief, and the summer vacation learning, none of those would be able to support any type of FTE. The ESSER grant and the grant from the town that the town had, both of those could potentially support an FTE for nurses if that's something that we decide to use the funds for. The one thing that I always caution when we start putting staff on federal grants, if it's MTRS, we lose almost 10% of the grant for MTRS. So if you put a teacher on there that costs $100,000, you have to pay MTRS $10,000. So if the grant was for $100,000, you've already lost 90,000 of it. So, okay. So I tend to not want to put staff on federal grants, just because if it is a professional staff and it's MTRS eligible, you're going to lose a portion of the grant to pay MTRS when, you know, it's.
However, to get to a shorter answer is that Martha and I were talking about this yesterday, because I had a conversation with Marianne Hartman, chair of the Board of Health, who was speaking on behalf of the town administrator, who was looking to hire additional nursing staff, and would we be interested in doing that? And so Ms. Seibert and I were talking about the fact that we would be. So however we try to fund it, and if we're losing money from a grant, if it's a short-term position for the foreseeable future with what's going on, it would be something that I would support.
Sorry, that was the better answer.
No, it wasn't.
I know you and I talked about it yesterday, so I'm tired.
Thank you.
Both answers were important.
All right, any more questions? Anyone?
Yeah, it's not really a grant question. I'm just kind of, since we're not doing another, a different budget discussion, just have we happened to hear anything about Chapter 70 funding?
So I have not. I did go through the budget yesterday with the superintendent, but I just wasn't ready to have a presentation ready for the committee.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I have not heard anything. It's been crickets right now. So.
All right. Anyone else for Ms. Seibert? So thank you. Hey, Pam, should we talk about the distance regulation?
Yes.
Or do you want to go back? Do you have other stuff on your superintendent's report to go back to?
I just want to go briefly through it. I think I touched on everything, and then I would like to circle back with that. So I think I may have chimed in with the other items on that report, but is that one the link?
No, that one doesn't have the link. I don't know where it is. Hold on. Fall reopening, protocols, classroom spacing.
Where's the agenda?
I got denied from that one. Hold on.
Agenda, is that, it's not the first tab? The very first tab on the screen?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm tired too. Wait, that's the one I don't have access to.
All right, let's see if I can share my screen.
I don't know why I don't have access to it.
So let me get out of this and go to my screen. How come I can't get out? We had it though.
I have a few of your things up.
So I think the only thing I had was I had the athletic update that they were looking at doing it for September 14th. I talked about my Tuesday talks, the union collaboration with and leadership. I think I've covered everything that was on there. The summer and vacation learning grant, that was the other item on there. We're waiting to hear the Innovation Pathways grant. We haven't heard on that one yet, but you know, we're really getting some good money to support our efforts. And so that was really the gist of, and my reopening plan presentation was the gist of my report tonight. I did mention to Ms. Seibert that I was going to ask permission of the chair to move the FY21 budget update to the next meeting because we had so many things going on. So yes, I would like to talk about the distance because you're not medical professionals, but you are the ones that are going to be voting on this plan for submission, and that is going to help guide the work that we do in the next week, in the next coming weeks. So
I feel like I'm just, anyone else want to talk? Because I have a strong opinion on this.
I want to hear it.
My opinion is when I emailed Representative Lori Ehrlich, and she was bringing questions to a hearing, and I asked, you know, all of a sudden we're hearing 3 feet, and I've never heard that before. Where's the data? There was no answer to that question.
Uh-huh.
And now that there's data that maybe it's fine, I don't get it. Like, how are we the only people in the world that I'm hearing this about? So I feel like with the absence of real data, I'm all for 6 feet.
I agree.
Can we go, Ted, you wanted to say something?
I 100% agree with 6 feet, and I think it's easier to start at 6 and go down than start at 3 and go up.
Yeah.
And I really, like you said, the superintendent said, I'm not a medical professional. There was a gentleman that had a question in regards to, you know, breaking down the students in regards to the ratios, and one child getting COVID is enough for me. I would never want that on my conscience. I've been tested for COVID for 4 times, and I can't imagine that. I say go higher, and it's much easier. That's a huge responsibility that I think we have.
I think I agree with the two of you. I think that this is one of the problems that I'm having right now with the Department of with DESE. I think the idea that this is being left to districts to make a choice based on how they feel rather than on science is, I don't even understand it. So I think that choosing something other than 6 feet is choosing something other than what the science is currently saying, and knowing that everything changes every week. So for the moment, everywhere else in the world, it's 6 feet.
Is Europe at 6 feet? I thought they had gone to 1 meter. No?
They have gone. I heard that today at a meeting I was in, 1 meter, but it doesn't disregard, you know, CDC is still saying 6 feet. Until CDC changes what they're saying, how does the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, I understand they have medical research to support that. I agree with Mr. Delano that I do not want to be responsible for a spike for one case if I can prevent it by following scientific guidelines. That is my personal feeling.
What are daycare centers doing? I mean, I think we have to also consider that kids that aren't in school are going to probably go somewhere. I don't think we can assume that they're going to be staying home because parents are going back to work. So the kids are going, a lot of them are going to have to go somewhere. And so wherever they're going, it may not be 6 feet apart, or they may not be doing the strict kind of things that we would be doing. So, you know, I think— I
can't control that. I can only control the kids that are within my district and in my buildings.
Understood, but I mean,
No, I know what you're saying. I understand.
Sick, but you know, we also have to understand that we're not, this isn't the quarantine situation where they're going to be either home or at school. A lot of these kids are going to end up somewhere in some sort of situation. So.
Which is why I think all the more reason that when they are in school, that we are distancing as the CDC recommends. You know, again, I'm going to go back to the lack of direction currently from DESE. Suzanne, like you, when I got that, when we got that email from DESE, I was like, where did this 3 feet come from? It was the first time and only time I'd ever heard it in a sort of a formal capacity. And sure, I think, you know, different countries are doing different things, but like the idea that we would be making this decision at such a micro level doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I agree with that. I'm not sure why they want districts to do this.
I mean, for God's sakes, we're a board of overseers. We're not in any way, you know, we're not medical professionals.
Yeah, and Amy, this is John. I think just to add on to what you and Ted were saying, I agree. If DESE's not providing clear guidance here, then you know, we kind of have to go conservative on this and go with the 6 feet for now. And it's very likely that as we get closer to the school opening, that CDC may revise their guidelines, and we can act accordingly then. But in absence of that information, conservative seems to be the reasonable pathway here.
Suzanne, you're on mute.
So much noise in my house. Can we do we need to do an official vote, Pam, or you just want to hear I
didn't put vote on the.
Yeah, we have no vote. I mean, do you want our
I guess I want your support in following the 6 foot guideline.
You have my support.
I think you've heard, yeah, to at least start there.
I think you have all our support. It sounds unanimous.
Okay. When I was putting together that presentation, I realized I didn't put it with formally on the agenda vote requested. So I guess I don't think I can do it because it's not a formal vote requested, but knowing that I have your support and the decision tonight is to follow the 6 foot guideline is going to give Dr. Bacon and myself and Ms. Seibert all direction in how we move forward with these committees. So I appreciate that.
I will echo, there was a parent who I think asked for there to be some kind of question like that on the survey. I don't know what other people's thoughts are, but I don't think it could hurt to include something like that. Again, it's just, you know, it's just opinion once again, and I don't want this to become a politicized thing. But I would be very surprised if we heard, you know, a majority of parents coming back and saying, no, I want 3 feet. But it couldn't hurt to have that information.
Thank you. I appreciate the committee's support.
Pam, how about the task force? What are you looking for from school committee members? And
it's going to bring our numbers up. I originally had that like 15 to 20, but the people, there are key players on there, you know, the school resource officer, parents from a variety of groups and representation, a CPAC parent I've invited to be on there, a METCO PCO parent I've invited to be on there. I really do think to have it balanced, I would like 2 school committee members on there. I don't know when the meetings are going to be held. I understand everybody's got working commitments. I would like to get one on the books for this Friday, at least a kickoff meeting. There's a lot of things I have to share. So I leave it to you all to decide whether 1 or 2 members should be on there. I do think, you know, the chair, although we don't have one at this time, would be on there. But I leave it to you. I totally leave it to you.
What kind of a time commitment do you think this is going to be?
I would say 1 to 2 meetings a week for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Okay.
I would do it. I would do it if it's
because I don't think I'd be able to do it during the day because there's too many people that, you know, if I'm trying to truly involve parents and community, that I can't do it with people's working schedules. So it'd have to be mid-afternoon. Mid-afternoon is what I'm thinking. Okay. Mid to late afternoon.
I would gladly assist, but it's got to be after 3:30.
I could do that.
Who said I could do that?
I did. We could do it, 3:30, 4 o'clock is when I'd like to have those meetings. I don't want to go into evening meetings.
Amy, I said that I would.
Sorry, okay.
The policy part of it, I mean, I'm happy to help and in some way. I mean, I'm happy to do the meetings or help with the policy stuff in some way. If
I'm going to need you to do the policies. You're going to need to be involved in that piece of it. But we could bring it back to you. I'm just thinking,
like if you want, I mean, we haven't voted for a chair yet, but it's not going to be me. So.
I know. I kind of, yeah. I mean, it does seem like one of the policy people should be on it. But at the same time, and so I'm sort of the opposite of, I don't know that it has to be the chair on it because the chair is in a position to know so much anyway. There's so much contact. There's so much information.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Karen, I agree with you on that.
So Amy, I'm willing to throw, my name in if, if you're looking for a second person, fresh set of eyes sort of thing.
Well, I know John and I talked about this today. I wholeheartedly support John jumping in on this. As I said, I think there's, this is going to be a lot of trial by fire, and what better way to we need all 5 of us. So.
I know I agree. I mean, this is one of those things, and I don't know. You can just shoot me down because it's probably a terrible idea, but should we have, one permanent and maybe some of us rotate through? I know, right? That's crazy.
But maybe I only need one. And then I reach out to, maybe I only need the voice of one to bring it back to the committee. And then Suzanne and you have to be involved through policy. So there's really more involvement. It's fine. It's, I don't necessarily, I originally thought of one, and the committee is getting pretty big. So one is.
It sounds to me like you have a lot of the right people on the committee who, so to be able to have, I'm thinking you only need one of us.
Okay.
But Karen and Suzanne, I don't want to step in, especially on the policy, because policy is so onerous.
Well, I'm all about policy, so I'm more than happy to work with Suzanne and Karen.
I feel like that could be
Mark is on there, so she's in line with policy.
That part could be done. I mean, that part could be done after the, as we go, but not have to be in the meetings, I guess. I don't know. I'm a little.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think we'll stick Ted on this.
Was it Ted or John?
Or John?
They were both interested.
Guys can arm wrestle.
or just let them both do it. Let them both do it, and then Suzanne and I can help with the policy. And then Amy as chair will know what's going on, and maybe that will keep us all informed.
I like
Who said I'm chair?
Oh,
I'm gonna nominate you. In like 2 seconds.
Why don't we, so, you know what, Karen, I think that's a good idea. Why don't John and Ted do this?
I will add them to the email list, and I will make sure I communicate. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And then Mark Cyber can be our direct contact for Suzanne and I on policy.
Oh, yeah.
All right, super. So there's no chair update except for to elect a chair. So as vice chair, I nominate Amy O'Connor to take this role away from me.
Oh, that's funny. I second that.
Oh.
Let's discuss.
Let's have a discussion. Anyone have anything they want to say or not say? Just vote.
I wish I had a hat that I could hang on to.
Yeah, I think you'll be
the
great.
Most recent before Gargi, I think it makes the most sense.
I humbly accept your nomination.
Well, I would say that I'd like to make a motion for Amy to be chair, Suzanne to be vice chair. That was seconded by Karen.
All right, all in favor, roll call.
Karen, yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Suzanne, yes. Okay, Karen?
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
John?
Yes.
All right, so we have a new committee, and so we have, should we just table those other roles for next time? Like subcommittee roles?
Yes,
Yeah, I
because
think-
we're talking
I
about.
almost think we should have a workshop, and if we can get together socially distant, we should do that.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, Karen.
As chair?
I'm on it.
Set that up.
So I actually was going to suggest, Ron Mendez and I are working together on something, and we talked about how town meeting worked, and they used the cafeteria and large tables in the cafeteria and created a horseshoe so that they could meet in person. So we could set up so you guys could socially distance and have an in-person meeting if that's something you would like to consider.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that Suzanne and I were talking about this week was seeing if it made sense for us to start as a group having a socially distanced school committee meeting, our Wednesday meetings. I confess that it's gotten very easy to just run downstairs in my house and log on to a Zoom call. But I think that there's value to us face to face, at least occasionally, especially if we're talking about our schools being face to face.
Right.
Can I ask one question? By my calendar, and keeping in mind we have 102 people still and participants, our next meeting is the 12th of August.
Yeah, but we talked about, I know I talked with the superintendent about maybe we need to have one.
I think the first week
a week before, because we need to discuss this plan before.
Right, we need to go before the 10th because that's when the plan's due.
Yeah,
So
I wanted to change that up a bit and put another date in there, if that's okay.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we
then
have
maybe,
to.
yeah.
Like August 5th?
Yeah.
And then maybe we can use the 12th. We can still hang on to the 12th and see if we could do a workshop or something.
Yeah. Okay.
If that works.
I'll mention Maureen tomorrow.
Yeah, look, we have a lot of work to do before we start getting moving on school.
Yeah, we're going to need to be meeting in some form or fashion frequently.
Yeah. All right, so sorry, go ahead. Anything else? So the next item is the subcommittee updates. Sorry, just was reminding me that we never did community announcements, but maybe we can just hang on to that unless anyone has a pressing one they need to say. All right, so subcommittee updates, school building committee. Right now we're doing summer outreach, and would like anyone who's still on this call or watching this, if you have a group in town, a club, a book club, a neighborhood association, anything you want, if you'd like someone from the building committee to come and we would love to educate you about the 6 options that we're now looking at, how it's been narrowed down to 6. And by the end of August, it needs to be one option that will be forwarded to the MSBA and that hopefully will be put to a town vote next fall and built. So that's the stage we're at right now, and we're really trying to do outreach. We're at the farmers market every Sunday to talk to people. I did lunch pickup today, passed out some brochures at lunch pickup today, and I have plans to do a PTO. So anyway, we'd like to do outreach to as many people as possible. You know, we can do it socially distanced in person, like some sort of coffee on the curb or drinks in the driveway, or on Zoom. So whatever's your preference. If you have a group or you're in charge of a group or anything, we would welcome you inviting us to your gathering. So you can reach us on the school building committee website. There's a contact us email, and if anyone has any ideas, it would be greatly appreciated. I guess that's it. Anything else? We just have the consent agenda. I'm gonna read the consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of the committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. On the agenda tonight is the minutes from June 24th, 2020 and warrants 2052 and 2053. Can someone make a motion?
I will make the motion.
And can I have someone second the motion to accept the consent agenda?
Second.
All right, any discussion on this? So John, you probably will abstain from this because you weren't at the 24th meeting. But, and just for your FYI, the warrants, we're all responsible for reading them and checking them. But right now, Karen is the person that signs them. But we vote on them at our meetings. So all those in favor of the consent agenda, roll call. Amy?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Suzanne, yes. So motion passes. And now I need a motion to adjourn.
Suzanne, can I just, one question?
Yeah.
Pam, on the email address that you put out to the community in regards to questions on the reopening phases and 1, 2, and 3,
Yes.
can John and I get a copy? Is that gonna go to this, actually, is that gonna go to the school committee?
No, it was gonna go to this particular email address and I could share it with the committee, but I can
Okay.
certainly forward them out to, I'll be sharing them with that task force and also sharing them with this committee.
Okay. Sorry,
Can
Suzanne.
we, is it possible to put that email, if it's not already, on the school homepage, the district homepage?
Yes, I was unveiling it tonight. Now
Oh.
we'll get it posted.
Okay.
Miss
Thank you.
McInnes probably already has it up there. Are you kidding?
This presentation will be up there as well. I'll ask. Latanya's texting me that she's getting it done.
I knew it, right? As we speak. The best.
Thank you, Latanya.
All right, so motion to adjourn.
I will make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor, Amy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Suzanne, yes. All right, everyone, thanks for hanging on to the bitter end.
Good night. Thank you all.
Attendees that are still here, thank you so much. We appreciate your interest and your engagement. It's really helpful. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.